What do you need to unleash your creative thinking? The creative process is making new connections between old ideas or recognizing relationships between concepts. Creative thinking is not about generating something new from a blank slate, but rather about taking what is already present and combining those bits and pieces in a way that has not been done previously. While standing under the shade of an apple tree, Sir Isaac Newton saw an apple fall to the ground. Why should that apple always descend perpendicularly to the ground? Newton wondered. Why should it not go sideways, or upwards, but constantly to the Earth's center? Surely, the reason is that the Earth draws it. Therefore, there must be a drawing power in matter. And thus, the concept of gravity was born. The falling apple story has become one of the lasting and iconic examples of the creative moment. It is a symbol of the inspired genius that fills your brain during those eureka moments when creative conditions are just right. While being creative isn't easy, nearly all great ideas follow a similar creative process. What most people forget, however, is that Newton worked on his ideas about gravity in almost 20 years until, in 1687, he published his groundbreaking book, The Principia, Mathematical Principles of Natural Philosophy. The falling apple was just the starting point for a long train of thought. The creative thinking process has some stages. At first, you learn. During this stage, you focus on learning specific material related to your task and learning general material by becoming fascinated with a wide range of concepts. Next, examine what you have learned by looking at the facts from different angles and experimenting with fitting various ideas together. Afterward, put the problem completely out of your mind and do something else that excites you and energizes you. Later, your vision will come back to you with a flash of insight and renewed energy. Finally, shape and develop your idea based on feedback. For any idea to succeed, you must release it out into the world, submit it to criticism, and adapt it as needed. Creative thinking entails thinking outside the box. Creativity frequently involves lateral thinking or the ability to see patterns that are not obvious. Using your imagination to develop new ways to complete tasks, solve problems, and meet challenges are examples of creative thinking. It entails bringing a new, sometimes unconventional, perspective to your work. This way of thinking can aid in the productivity of departments and organizations. Employers value creative thinkers because it helps their bottom line. Companies that encourage creativity may see increased revenue growth. Positioning yourself as a creative thinker can help you stand out as a job candidate or leader in your current organization. Creative thinking requires our brains to make connections between seemingly unrelated ideas. Is this a skill that we are born with or develop through practice? In the 1960s, a creative performance researcher named George Land conducted a study of 1,600 5-year-olds, and 98% of the children scored in the highly creative range. Dr. Land retested each subject during 5-year increments. When the same children were 10 years old, only 30% scored in the highly creative field. This number dropped to 12% by age 15 and just 2% by age 25. As the children grew into adults, they effectively had the creativity trained out of them. In the words of Dr. Land, non-creative behavior is learned. Indeed, some people are primed to be more creative than others. However, nearly every person is born with some level of creative skill, and the majority of our creative thinking abilities are trainable. Approximately 22% of the variance in creativity is due to the influence of genes. This discovery was made by studying the differences in creative thinking between sets of twins. Now that we've established that creativity is a skill that can be cultivated, let's focus on why and how practice and learning affect your creative output. Being in the top 1% of intelligence does not correlate with being particularly creative. Instead, you simply have to be smart, not a genius, and then work hard. As long as you meet a threshold of intelligence, brilliant creative work is well within your reach. However, in the words of researchers from a 2013 study, we obtained evidence that once the intelligence threshold is met, personality factors become more predictive for creativity. What exactly are these personality factors that researchers refer to when it comes to boosting your creative thinking? one of the most critical components is how you view your talents internally. More specifically, your creative skills are primarily determined by approaching the creative process with a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. The basic idea is that when we use a fixed mindset, we approach tasks as if our talents and abilities are fixed and unchanging. However, we believe that our capabilities can be improved with effort and practice in a growth mindset. People who are praised for their talent now worry about doing the next thing. So instead, they'll stick to their comfort zone and get defensive when they hit setbacks. So what should we praise? The effort, the strategies, the doggedness, and persistence. The great people show the resilience they show in the face of obstacles, bouncing back when things go wrong and knowing what to try next. How can we apply the growth mindset to creativity in practical terms? The growth mindset is focused more on the process than the outcome. It is easy to accept in theory, but very hard to stick to in practice. Most people don't want to deal with the accompanying embarrassment or shame that is often required to learn a new skill. The possibility of looking stupid, feeling humiliated, or dealing with embarrassment along the way prevents us from getting started at all. To fully embrace the growth mindset and enhance your creativity, you need to be willing to take action in the face of these feelings, which so often deter us. How to be more creative? Assuming that you are willing to do the hard work of facing your inner fears and working through failure. First, you have to work through mental barriers and internal blocks. Also, commit to the process and create based on a schedule. Creating something useful and compelling is like being a gold miner. You have to sift through pounds of dirt and rock and silt to find a speck of gold in the middle of it all. Bits and pieces of genius will find their way to you if you permit yourself to let the muse flow. Carefully designed constraints are one of your best tools for sparking creative thinking. The more we limit ourselves, the more resourceful we become. One of my most successful creative strategies is to force yourself to think about seemingly disparate topics and ideas. Sleep longer. Like all cognitive functions, creative thinking is significantly impaired by sleep deprivation. Spending time in nature and increasing your exposure to sunlight can lead to higher levels of creativity. Embrace positive thinking makes it easier to make creative connections between ideas. Conversely, sadness and depression seem to lead to more restrictive and limited creative thinking. Anyone who creates something consistently will begin to judge their own work. It is natural to evaluate your work. It is natural to feel disappointed that your creation isn't as wonderful as you hoped it would be, or that you're not getting any better at your craft. But the key is not to let your discontent prevent you from continuing to do the work. You have to practice enough self-compassion not to let self-judgment take over. Share your work publicly. It will hold you accountable for creating your best work. It will provide feedback for doing better work. And when you see others connect with what you start, it will inspire you and make you care more. Sometimes sharing your work means you have to deal with haters and critics. But more often than not, the only thing that happens is that you rally the people who believe the same things you believe, are excited about the same things you are excited about, or support the work you believe. Average college students learn ideas once. Instead, the best college students relearn ideas over and over. Average employees write emails once. Elite novelists rewrite chapters again and again. Intermediate fitness enthusiasts mindlessly follow the same workout routine each week. The best athletes actively critique each repetition and constantly improve their technique. However, it is the revision that matters most. The world needs people who put creative work out into the world.